What is going on, everyone? Welcome on into Sports Talk with Bros. That was a bad loss. That was disturbing to see. Awful game of basketball. No flow whatsoever. And after I saw the way that it started, right here's Matisse Thybulle draining threes like he's Ray Allen. They score 37 points, and it seemed that maybe, just maybe, the shorthanded Raptors wouldn't have enough. But then the offensive rebounds continued to happen. Joel Embiid struggled from the floor. I thought James Harden was way too passive and always looking to pass the basketball, where at times they're looking for Matisse Thybulle. Matisse Thybulle should not be your weapon of choice, okay? I don't care if he hit three-pointers in the beginning of the game. I'm watching James Harden be passive, looking for his teammates, when I want him to take 20 shots. I want him to shoot so much more than he does. He shot 12 shots total. So one of the things I have stressed to this point was, if Joel Embiid and James Harden play to their capability, will that be able to make up for the deficiency of the rest of your roster? Well, the problem tonight is Embiid and James Harden didn't have it. So if they don't have it, it really is irrelevant. If they're not going to play well, it really doesn't matter about the bench or Niang or Maxey or Tobias. It starts with the superstars. Now, I get it. Over 82 games, okay, Joel Embiid and James Harden are great players. Specifically tonight, though, Joel struggled, and he had to really earn it. And when he did go to the line, it took a lot of power to do so. And you could tell that the ball was not falling. At times, the ball rolled around the rim, which felt like 6,000 times, and you thought it would eventually drop, but it didn't. It rolled out, and then it ended up going to the Raptors, and then they went down and went on a nice little run, or they had a wide open look and they cashed in, or something along those lines, because that's what it felt like. And really, I mean, it's not as if, which it is pretty crazy. Doc Rivers pointed this out in the postgame show. For as much as we despise the offensive rebounds as we should that the Raptors got, how the hell were the Sixers involved in this game? 7 turnovers in the fourth quarter. That lineup, oh my God, I wanted to throw up. That lineup of Paul Reed, DeAndre Jordan, James Harden, Danny Green, and George Niang, it resulted in 3 turnovers within, 1.5 minutes of action, 2 minutes at the most. Turnover, James Harden offensive foul led to a turnover. That's terrible. So with those turnovers, with 20 offensive boards, how the hell did this come down to the wire? And don't even get me started on the play design and the lack of execution of whatever the hell happened between Tobias Harris and Joel Embiid. And that was even explained during the postgame show. You had Embiid, who was, I think he mentioned that he was trying to roll James Harden with the ball in his hands, and then a pop out of Tobias Harris. What the hell was that? That was brutal. That was terrible. And now the Raptors go down the other way. What are we doing? Now, if you want to bitch and complain about what happened with James Harden and the drive late and Boucher, whatever. There's so many other details to this that bothered me that I'm not going to bitch and complain about that one specific play, because it's obvious that this team did not do so many things that ended up biting them in the ass from pretty much 8 minutes in. I can't say from the jump, because a handful of minutes in, they were cruising and they were scoring to the point where I remember taking a screenshot and loving what I was getting, because the team was just playing good team basketball. Thybulle had 8 points. Harden had 6 points. Maxey had 9 points. Embiid had 7 points. You had 37 points total. Danny Green came off the bench. It seemed like everyone was contributing and getting the Sixers some sort of life for them. Before you knew it, here comes the Raptors chipping away at it, because nonstop, just grabbing the boards and grabbing the offensive boards. And over time, over 48 minutes, think about how many more defensive possessions you have to be involved in, and that takes a lot of energy, and it really does beat you down. And I think that played a massive role in why they weren't able to execute as smoothly as you would like. Keep in mind, Joel Embiid, he needs a day off. He needs a rest day. He needs to be sitting one of these games. Now, they elected to play him tonight. I don't know what that means for the Miami Heat, but the last couple of nights he was questionable before the action began. I think it's time to cool down a little bit, big fella. I don't care about you wanting to play. I don't care about you caring about the MVP. I don't care. I don't care. I care about postseason basketball and you being ready to rock for springtime hoops for a 7-game series. I don't care about the Miami Heat on a Monday night after you lose to the shorthanded Toronto Raptors. So sit down, relax. You played a lot of basketball. You carried the Sixers a long way when Ben Simmons was being a bitch and he was sitting on the edge of the bench and he was holding out, and you did a lot of great things for this basketball team. Now, though, it's starting to come back and you're feeling it a bit. Okay, that's fine. That happens. This is called being a human being, playing a lot of basketball. Relax, breathe, take a night off, and let's get Joel Embiid the time that he needs to be fully rested. And they made note of this, and they've been vocal about it that, during this back stretch, there is going to be chances for Joel Embiid to sit. And yeah, well, let's start taking advantage of that. And there's no reason to play tomorrow, even though we know he's going to want to, and we know he's going to see Jimmy Butler and have that sense of urgency and have that fire. But I'm sorry, it doesn't matter to me about tomorrow night. What matters to me is making sure Joel Embiid doesn't have this type of fatigue. But what bothers me too, though, is how many times after a game am I going to hear Doc Rivers discuss the fact we didn't run sets, we didn't have any flow, we didn't do that. I know, Doc, trust me, I saw it. But what are you going to do about it? Well, we didn't really do any pick and rolls. You're damn right we didn't do any pick and rolls. Why? How come? Why didn't you make it happen? I was praising the living hell out of those pick and rolls. Did you see one pick and roll? There wasn't one pick and roll that stood out to me. And keep in mind, every single game, I go through a list of plays that I love. For example, I'll run through my notepad right now, and I'll get to a game here. Let's say Sixers control the Mavs. That's the title of my notepad. James Harden in the fourth, penetrated beautifully, step back, passes to DeAndre Jordan, nice lob, and controlled the pace of the game. Let's go to Joel Embiid in the first half. Finished with 32 points. A beautiful step back three from your big man. A pick and roll to Tobias Harris in the dunker spot. A pick and roll with a nice slam because the sea parted and he took advantage. Had 5 steals in transition off the glass and one that made no sense. The block and the defense was tremendous. These are the areas that I normally jot down because they're so sensational. Where tonight, between these guys, I got nothing. Yeah, there was one Maxey play that was incredible where you lost your mind. And there was a Joel Embiid play where the ball, he double tapped in and threw it back in. But ultimately, 6 of 20 is not going to get the job done. And that's where it begins for me. Not that I'm blaming them for a long period of time here. I know that we're only here because of Joel Embiid. But tonight, I thought fatigue settled in, and that's starting to snowball. And just from a bigger picture of, well, Tobias sucked, and the bench sucked, and this guy sucked. And you're right. But it doesn't matter if one of those players are good. If your players who you are supposed to rely on doesn't have it that night, it's going to be hard and rare for this team to succeed if it doesn't start with those 2 players. And for tonight, I didn't see those 2 players play in the way that I need them to for a lot of different variables, for a lot of different reasons. But at the end of the day, it wasn't there tonight. Before we continue, if you are new to the channel, make sure you smash that subscribe button. Hit that thumbs up button as well. I greatly appreciate it. If you're looking to buy tickets to go to any event, any Sixers games coming up, Phillies are ready to start off soon in the beginning of April. Promo code BROADS at SeatGeek's checkout page. Opening day tickets looking pretty damn nice. Promo code BROADS at SeatGeek's checkout page gets you $20 off of your purchase. It's a no-brainer. Get yourself to a game today. And then lastly, TikTok, Broads Media. We're incorporating a lot of fun there. But really, I saw a team that didn't have the edge after 8 minutes in. I don't know if they thought that they'd walk all over this team. Let's look at it. No Fred, so they didn't have VanVleet, and they didn't have OG. You scored 37 points in the first quarter. Do you just think this is going to be a breeze? This is going to be easy. We'll be okay. Or over time, did those offensive rebounds really come back to bite you because it's nonstop having to focus on that defense? But even with that said, you got Matisse Thybulle, who's making defensive plays block after block, and then Maxi's pursuing with his pace, and he's flying. He had that excellent speed of burst of speed that got him to the rack easily there. I don't know how any defender will ever catch up with that because it's so quick. And then he had the three that was unreal, and the place erupted. So that was during that third quarter or so of the Matisse Thybulle show defensively. And I'll give credit to Matisse Thybulle tonight. I thought he was all over the place. Great defensively, and obviously what he did in the beginning of the game. But I feel that maybe they tried too much to push it with Matisse Thybulle. It's nice to have. It's okay to utilize a cut by Thybulle. But I don't want James Harden living and dying with Matisse Thybulle cuts. And I can't believe I'm saying this. And there were jokes surrounding this prior to the trade actually going down. And then even when it did go down and we were waiting 5 days or so until we were able actually to see him with the jersey on. But could you imagine him coming here and passing up shots? Could you imagine him coming here and forgetting how to play basketball? Just because that tends to happen here with certain players. Again, it doesn't work out the way that you would like to. So it's all jokes. Here I am, and I'm watching James Harden not being aggressive. I need him to take more shots. 12 shots? What are we doing here? 12 shots. And he's passing them up for Tobias. And he's passing them up for Thybulle. Go, James. Keep going. No, I get it. That's part of the double-digit assists that I loved so much. And he had an ugly amount of turnovers tonight. But I just want him to have more of that scorer mentality. When you go back and look at where he was when he was putting up all those buckets, and keep in mind, different roster, different part in his career, but he was putting up 22 field goals a game, 24 field goals a game. I can't do 12. I cannot do 12. I'm sorry. That's totally unacceptable. And if you look, I just want to see how that relates to everybody else on the team when I go to the box score, just so you can see what other players are taking. Tobias Harris went 2 of 9. He only played 27 minutes, though, because just like Matisse Thybulle does at times, Tobias is out there getting brutal fouls. 5 personal fouls, ends up having to go on the bench, and Matisse Thybulle had to grab his wrist at that 1.2. So you had foul trouble with Tobias. It looked like Matisse Thybulle had a bit of discomfort, and that's when you got that terrible lineup of Paul Reed and DeAndre Jordan. What are we doing? Even DeAndre Jordan, the guy just stinks. He's flat out terrible. Now, I don't anticipate Paul Reed or Charles Bassey being any better, to be honest with you. I don't think that they could be any worse either. They're not the difference in you making a serious run or a serious push by any means. But at this point, is it worth trying something different? Yeah, I don't know how. In any way, shape, or form, though, it's Harden, Niang, Danny Green, Paul Reed, and Jordan. And by the way, when you see those 3 turnovers, please. So Tobias with 9, Embiid with 20, Maxey with 14, Harden with 12, Thybulle with 6, Niang with 9. So Niang with 9 shots, Harden with 12. Harden playing 38 minutes, Niang playing 29. Now, one guy's job is to just let it fly and take a lot of shots. He took 7 threes. So that's what his identity is supposed to be. Hang out. When I get you the rock, shoot it. While James Harden is more of setting up an offense, so I understand how that would be different. But I don't even want Maxey taking more shots than James Harden. It should go Embiid, and then it should go James Harden. And it also bothers me hearing Doc Rivers talk about post-game that, but the low post presence, and he wasn't getting down there as much. And then on top of that, whenever there were things that we liked, we couldn't get the ball passed there the way we would like to, and then there were some turnovers, and there was some sloppiness, and you're not wrong. You're not wrong by that. But instead of over 3 quarters, and really 3.5 quarters, dying a slow death, which is basically what happened, that was a miserable game of basketball. I mean, that was awful from both sides. I couldn't believe what I was watching. Guys are just throwing up trash, and the game was super choppy, and no one really got into any sort of rhythm at all. The fact that the Sixers had the lead at one point, I'm going, how and what and what? What is this? It was a bad game of basketball, and they have to play tomorrow. They got to flush it real quick. Now, maybe that's a good thing or maybe that's a bad thing. Only the result tomorrow will tell us. But I guess it matters with the context, because if Embiid's not playing, well, then it's not the same. And I don't know what to even expect at that point. Probably a loss. So it's not the same as if he does play. And even if he does play on a back-to-back, when he's obviously fatigued and tired, if I'm getting a 70% Joel Embiid, well, that's irrelevant to when we have a 95% Joel Embiid when he is on rest. And when he's not playing so many games in a row, when he's not forcing himself in back-to-backs all season long. Because in the playoffs, there's no such thing. That's why it's so hard to necessarily take things away when this happens, because sometimes what is going on throughout the 82 is so irrelevant to what happens in the 7-game series. But there's no sugarcoating this. It was a really bad game of basketball by your 76ers, and arguably your worst loss of the year. And I know every bad loss feels that way in the moment, but I stay pretty even keel on bad losses, and I say don't overreact and don't overworry, and I still feel that way. Look, the Sixers are 8-3 with James Harden. That's a 60-22 pace. Not that you would go 8-3 after every 11 games with this current roster, but let's not lose sight of 8-3 is not something to just pretend isn't solid either. It's just right now they are still trying to figure this puppy out. And that's what happens when you make a trade at the deadline and change your team so drastically. You take that risk. And it was a calculated risk worth taking. If you're Daryl Morey, do not pretend like it wasn't. With that, we'll open up the phones. 856-442-9805 is the phone number to hop into the conversation here. 856-442-9805. Let's go to our first caller. Good evening. You're on Broads Media.
Hello?
Hello.
Yo, what's up, man? I'm just leaving the game here, so I didn't sit down and obviously look at any of the numbers. I'm actually trying to watch the game, but
sure,
dude, that was terrible.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. And I want to know, when you were in there, because I could hear it from the TV as I was sitting here in the basement watching, but how disturbed was that fan base throughout the game? You could hear the moans and the groans and the disgust by everyone. Oh, I hate being in those type of environments.
Yeah, it was less than ideal, I will say. This is my one game that I went to this year, and I did not pick a great one to go to. So what I wanted to say about it was the same song and dance with, no defense and no rebounding, but the added bonus of also no scoring. Which what did they end up with? 85 points? What, they have 35 in the first quarter? What is that, 13 a quarter after that?
It got really ugly, and thanks so much for the phone call. I greatly appreciate it. Love that on your way home from the Wells Fargo Center, you're checking it out. It was 37 points in the first half. They finished with, it was about 89 points or so. So you do the math, 88 points they finished with. Not good. 51 points in every other quarter. And it goes back to the offensive rebounds is going to be an issue. Now, this Raptors team isn't the same as any other team out there. They definitely have a different, unique style to them. They didn't have some of their best players either, but Nick Nurse, and it's hilarious. I was on the Fanatic before the game began, after the Flyers game, and I led you into Sixers basketball. And I thought it was fascinating that Nick Nurse, and I brought this up and I kind of got made fun of. Not that I put too much stock into it, but I thought it was interesting that Nick Nurse before the game said, we've got a lot of things on the menu to defend Embiid and Harden. He acknowledged he thinks about showing his hand now for a potential playoff matchup, but, quote, I'll probably throw everything out there tonight just to see everything I can see. And I thought that, I kind of respect that. I kind of respect the mind game. I have no idea. I have no idea if there was anything involved because of knowing that they were missing some significant pieces to their team. But now you're wondering if there was anything to it. And there is a history of Nick Nurse finding ways to make Embiid feel uncomfortable. But with Serge Ibaka, Marc Gasol, and oh, by the way, Kawhi Leonard, it's a lot different from that perspective to where you were now. And honestly, I'm the one that gives everyone respect when respect is due. And you have to give credit to the Raptors for winning the way that they did. They grinded it out. It was a little tough. You're on the road, hostile environment. But I thought the Sixers sucked. I thought tonight was more about the Sixers sucked more than it was the Raptors were so great that they forced the Sixers to suck. I thought the Sixers shot themselves in the foot more than it was the Raptors were so damn amazing. With the offensive boards, it did give them secondary chances here, and you give them credit for earning those boards. I'm not downplaying that. But those turnovers and the ugliness and the lack of ball movement and the stagnant offense, that's more just them playing poorly than anything else. And with Joel, I just thought he was off today. And he's been showing signs of being tired. And he's been kind of a little bit, all right, it's time. And I think that's why they mentioned it. They mentioned it over the next couple of games, over the next schedule, when we look at the schedule, over our next little stretch, I'm sure we'll be looking at date. But there's a reason why that happens, because they see what we're seeing. Today it was an overall team loss for sure, but you're always going to have offensive rebound issues. The other team, they're going to grab them, and they're going to get some secondary chances. It just comes down to limiting how many. 20? That's unheard of. You can't be doing 20. Transition D. There's flaws within this team that we already know about. If Embiid is 12 of 20 instead of 6 of 20, that's a big difference. But we've seen Joel Embiid do that a lot more times than not doing that. But then you come out with the win, even with the 20 offensive rebounds that happen. You don't really stand a chance if Harden and Embiid have a slip up or have a hiccup. And they're human, so I'm allowing them to do it. It's okay if after 9 dominant games, Joel has a hiccup. After 7 straight games of great basketball. After 2 months of unbelievable basketball, something happens where he has a 6 for 20 night. That's gonna happen. Trust me. I'm okay with one bad little slip up of Joel Embiid because I know 98% of the time it's going to be a special type of talent out there that is so ridiculous. Tonight just happened to be the night where I think you're showing signs of Embiid needs to sit on the bench for a night. That's all. Back to the phones we go. Hello, how are you?
Hey, I just want to start off this call by saying, at least for the rest of the season, go Florida Panthers, win the cup for G. And
I agree.
Yeah, this loss, it makes me kind of nervous. Well, whether that be justified or unjustified or just reactionary, it does make me kind of nervous for the playoffs a little bit, because this was a slower paced game. This was like a very much like a defensive battle, like 2 teams that were like kind of struggling, but you know what I mean, right? It was a defensive battle. Teams, they weren't like flying up and down the floor. It was tough, and we struggled big time in this game. And I think a lot of it came down from coaching. I think Nick Nurse flat out coached Doc Rivers tonight, and that's been a recurring theme throughout Rivers' entire playoff career. He just has gotten out-coached pretty much every series he's ever had.
Yeah, I mean, I think Doc didn't play. He was not out there. And thank you so much for calling in. I don't think Doc had a good game by any means. I would put Doc on the list of issues that happened today. I also thought that the player sucked. And that's what the bigger problem was. Your player sucked. I thought your player sucking was more of the problem than Doc. Doc sucked too. And that's why you lost this basketball game, because your players stunk and your coach stunk. I don't know many teams that are going to win when your players suck and your coach sucks. The number one problem to me, though, was I didn't like Joel Embiid's execution tonight. I didn't like James Harden and the way that he played tonight. And I didn't like Tobias Harris tonight. And I thought Tyrese Maxey had some moments. I thought Matisse Thybulle was fine. If that's the game you get out of Matisse Thybulle, you're getting great play out of him. That was a very strong effort out of Matisse Thybulle today. But your bench, I mean, there's times where Niang has 11 points. He's knocking down shots at will, but he's still a minus 20 or so because your bench is flat out horrendous. So that is more of it than Doc Rivers. Look, I'm not a Doc Rivers fan, but to scream that, oh, this and that, and there's not many options here. I would have never went to Paul Reed. But even if he didn't go to Paul Reed and he stayed with Tobias Harris or something, who had personal foul problems at the time, he clearly didn't have the answer tonight, Tobias Harris. You definitely don't want to put Furkan Korkmaz out there. He stinks. Isaiah Joe's not saving the day. So I despise the decision-making because to me, it doesn't make much sense. But I also know no matter what other combination he put out there, I'm probably going to be saying the same exact thing because there's not many options to go to. This is how the team is going to win. The team is going to win if Embiid plays extremely well, Harden plays extremely well, Tobias Harris and Maxey, one of those two has an excellent performance, or they both do well with Maxey 15 points, Tobias 17 points. You're going to need Niang to splash some shots off the bench. You're going to need Thybulle to have a couple cuts. That's the recipe for success. So if one of those things don't happen, someone else has to pick up the pace. For example, if Thybulle can't give you any cuts, but Niang gives you an extra 3, maybe that's enough. If Tyrese Maxey only has 8 points, but Tobias gives you 26, maybe that's enough. Or the other way around. Let's say Tobias only gives you 10, but it's Maxey's night that gives you 26. Maybe that's enough. But it's a combination and a correlation of what I just put out on the table here. And every game's different. Every night's a different night. So one night Harden can explode, the next night another guy explode, whatever. It's never going to be the same exact and perfect to a T. One night someone will struggle. Do you have enough for another player to pick you up? Or someone else who's already dominant just have an even more dominant night? So instead of 30, they have 38. But that makes up for Matisse Thybulle's 8 points that he didn't have on that specific night because it might be one of those 2-point efforts by Matisse Thybulle. That's your recipe. And that's not really going to change. And that's basically what this year is going to be about. And that might not be enough. It may not be. We had Amy Fadul on Saturday's show, Tyrone and I from Bet Rivers Casino, and Amy was awesome. And one of the questions we're talking about, where this team can go, and I thought she laid it out beautifully. Not that anyone wants to hear this because all you care about is winning Larry O'Brien trophies and you want to win a championship, and I get that. I totally do. But she brought up, based off of where we've been as of late, second round exit, Ben Simmons, under the basket, Toronto, quadruple doink, all that laid out. If you get to the Eastern Conference Finals this year and you run out of gas and your holes on your roster end up being exposed and you lose to a team where you just realize they have more than you, because there are teams that have more than you, but you're also in the mix at the same time. Because why do you feel comfortable about the Bucks? Giannis and Chris Middleton. Why do you feel comfortable about the Nets? Kyrie Irving, Kevin Durant. Why do you feel comfortable about the Boston Celtics? Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum. Why don't you feel comfortable about Cleveland? Darius Garland, a very young player. Then who? Why don't you feel comfortable about the Bulls? Zach LaVine and DeMar DeRozan. Nice players. Probably a third player, though, on a real championship team. For example, Kyrie, Kevin Durant, DeMar. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? That's where I see a DeMar or a Zach LaVine. So why do I feel that you're in the conversation? Well, James Harden and Joel Embiid. But every team, we have problems on O boards. Every team has their version of the Sixers problem on O boards. You just don't have the same emotional tie to those problems. Now, the Sixers have problems. They do. They absolutely do. Maybe you can still get to the Eastern Conference Finals, though, and that wouldn't be a failure. Because even with the long-term thought of this, We understood that when the trade was made, there's still many situations that you have to fix here. You couldn't fix them after the trade, though. The buyout market's not saving you. You can't get every person you want to in a trade at a trade deadline. So Daryl Morey still has work to do, and he knew that as soon as the trade was done. But the trade put you in a better position even for this year and the next couple of years compared to where you were with an Andre Drummond who was walking at the end of the year anyway, and Seth Curry, who's a nice player, but you'll be okay with not having a Seth Curry. He's not a make or break the franchise. James Harden is a franchise-changing type of player, but he's got to be more aggressive. I think he's so into this point guard role. He's so into figuring out the teammates role, which I'm not mad at him for wanting to figure out the teammates. But I do think that there's a layer here of needing James Harden to be more aggressive and say, fuck you. Fuck you! Fuck you! Fuck you! Go downhill, attack. Take it to the rim. He's actually beating guys with the crossover. You can see it. Top of the key, top of the perimeter. What's he do? He gets the crossover. He separated himself from the defender, and he had room to go downhill and go to the rack. But after that, he's looking for Thibault. Looking for Thibault? I don't want to go through Thibault in my offense. I'll live and die with Harden being aggressive. I don't even care if it ends up missing or whatnot. I want him to take more shots than 12. He shouldn't only have a couple more shots than Tobias Harris in 11 more minutes because Toby had 5 personal fouls. We know what Tobias is. James Harden has another step in him. And I know Toby does too. But I need James to be more thinking of a scorer at times. That's what makes James Harden special. And to be honest with you, I think that will open up everything else even more. The more he thinks about scoring and the more he scores, there's a different level of intensity by the defenders. And now they have to play a different way to stop him from scoring, which then naturally opens up his other teammates and opens up guys in the corner with spacing and things of that nature because he's so dynamic. He can will you to victories by just dropping buckets on your ass nonstop. So then all the passing and finding open teammates, that's going to occur. All right, I want to see, I heard all the Doc Rivers comments. I need to hear from some of these players after the game. I'm waiting for my Twitter feed to load, although I can't stand my computer right now. It is giving me some issues. It's giving me some problems. So maybe I will look at my Twitter feed on my phone just so it can load a little bit faster. I got no idea what's happening with the PC today. So just want to see, Joel Embiid was hit in the mouth and had to see the team dentist, the Sixer said after the game. Oh, okay. Will not speak to the media. He was knocked in the face and is seeing the team dentist. When was he hit in the mouth? Did I miss that? Did I miss that? What did James Harden say? So here's James Harden shooting in the last 7 games. Shooting 35%. 5 of 15 against the Bulls. 3 of 17 against the Nets. 5 of 19 against the Magic. I could live with those numbers, the totals. 15, 17, 19. That's more in the category that would satisfy me. But after that, there's been 4 games of 11, 12, 12. I can't do that. Is where it's unacceptable for me. We need him to put his foot on the gas and keep going. They'll fall. 7 games is not enough sample size to tell me, oh, James Harden can't score anymore. What, only 35%? Oh, he can't score anymore. 7 games. I've seen plenty of basketball players have a 7-game stretch that might not tickle your fancy and give you that little whoo-hoo. You know what I'm saying? Now, did I miss the hit in the mouth thing? Oh, it was the 4th quarter. I don't know why. I had to run upstairs for a half a second to let my dog out because my fiance gave me the butt. Hey, I need you out for a second. I ran up. I let the dogs out. Did I miss the smack in the face when I let the dog out? Maybe I did. I'm waiting to hear from James Harden, though. I don't see any quotes from him. So maybe we'll just keep our eyes out. Oh, yeah, here you go. James Harden said he feels good, and the plan is for him to play tomorrow against the Heat. James Harden on where the team is. We're in a good place. We just need to be a little bit more consistent, and we will be. James Harden says this, for me personally, I just have to play better. Mentioned he felt like he had too many careless turnovers and could have helped more on the glass. Well, that was something that I noted when he first got here, which was you lost a lot of rebounding in Ben Simmons, but you definitely did get something in a guard that can grab some boards. And I like the fact that he's taking pride and he can help on that side because they desperately need as much as they can possibly get at this point. So that's where we're at with James Harden. Nothing groundbreaking, but I do like to hear the tone. Obviously, reading the comments in quote form is not the same as tone, as body language, feel, the way that they're communicating with the media. You don't get that same exact vibe, but just didn't seem too groundbreaking tonight out of James Harden. I like to hear the way that they say certain things when it's tough and when adversity's being hit, and even when things are great. How's the vibe? How's everyone's body language? What's the smile on the faces like? What's the negative tone like? I take value because it speaks highly of the mindset of the team. It speaks highly of care level. It speaks a lot about where the locker room is. And I think right now they're understanding they're a damn good basketball team that's going through a bit of a funk. And we all understood when the trade happened. We said it out loud. All of us spoke to one another and said it out loud for days and days and days, waiting for them to play their first game as a unit. There's going to be bumps and bruises. There's going to be tough moments along the way. So now that we're experiencing that, you just got to keep that in your back pocket and understand that we were prepared for this. And we made sure that as a city and as a fan base, that we understood there was going to be bumps. And right now they're going through a bit of a bump. But bumps happen to all teams. In the beginning of the year, now obviously timing matters. You would like to not have it with 14 games to go, with 10 games to go, with 8 games to go. But that's a calculated risk also, and it's not the same as the example I'm about to use with the Boston Celtics because you brought in James Harden, so that changes everything. But the beginning of the year, Boston Celtics, they're awful. They suck. They blow. They're never going to do anything. They're pathetic. Trade Jaylen Brown. Get a new head coach. The franchise sucks. Brad Stevens, they don't know what they're doing. They moved Brad Stevens from coach to front office, and they're a disaster. Well, maybe it was just a bit of a rut and figuring out how to play with one another. Now they play electric basketball. Now they're fantastic, and they're a great team, and all Sixers fans are scared to see them. Well, you weren't saying that when they were going through their rut. The Sixers right now are going through a rut. The Brooklyn Nets went through a rut. Every team. At one point, Milwaukee, the narrative was, they're missing something. They're not the same team as we saw when they won the championship. They're good, but are they as good as what we've seen in previous years when they were going through a rut? Every team has their version of a 7, 8, 9 game span where you're trying to get into a groove. As I alluded to, though, timing does matter. Entering the playoffs compared to middle of the season, but you're also changing your quarterback. You're changing your number one primary ball handler. That is inevitable when looking at where the Sixers are compared to everybody else. That was the fourth quarter. This is a text message from Jonathan. That was the fourth quarter you want to forget as soon as you can. Worst quarter of James Harden since the trade. Need to clear our heads and focus on Miami. Well, if they come back tomorrow and they bounce back and they get a good win under your belt, I think that would put some people at ease. And that win on Friday night against the Dallas Mavericks, that was a damn good win. And I don't think that was getting enough credit. And I'm a little bummed because if they won tonight, that would have been 2 solid victories in a row heading into Miami on a second half of a back-to-back against Miami, that is, on a second half of a back-to-back. But that Friday win against the Mavericks, that Mavericks team, I want you guys to all know, because I don't think that win against the Mavericks is getting as much credit as it deserves. So before the Sixers dominated Luka, they beat the Brooklyn Nets. They beat the Boston Celtics. They beat the Rockets. They were on a 3-game win streak. Not that the Rockets are good, but they beat Boston on the road. They beat the Brooklyn Nets on the road. And then they lost to the Sixers, and they weren't even close or involved whatsoever. That's a really strong team that wins a lot of basketball games in a tough West. And I thought that lost sight because it was easy, because it was a no-brainer, wire-to-wire type win where you just felt in control the whole time. If it was a game that they had to crawl in the fourth quarter, toe-to-toe, Luka big three, Joel a big three, Luka big three, James Harden a lob to Joel Embiid in a pick-and-roll situation. And it was nonstop jabs and haymakers being thrown by both teams, and the Sixers came out victorious. There would have been more of an eruption. There would have been more of an excitement because it's, oh, wow, you went toe-to-toe with a dangerous team. Instead, he just blew him out. It's like, yeah, but Luka had a bad night. Yet when the Sixers just have a bad night, you don't feel that same way as you do when it's the other player. Luka just had a good night. Or, excuse me, Luka just had a bad night. But if James Harden or Joel Embiid just has a bad night, it doesn't go against them the same way. It's pretty interesting how that works. That doesn't change the fact, though, that this was awful. This was one of their worst ones for sure. We do have some phone lines open if you are interested in calling into the show at 856-442-9805. I would love to hear from you about what you feel this team is. And a lot of the words that I see being thrown around in the chat is inconsistent. Are they an inconsistent team? I think as of right now, you're seeing some seesaw. If you want to throw a little Mark Zumoff in there, you're on the seesaw back and forth. I think as of right now, they're kind of trying to figure each other out. So you see when things are grooving that it could be very solid and very successful. But at the same time, when things are ugly, they're trying to work it out. And that's why you throw together a lineup that they did in that fourth quarter that resulted in 3 straight turnovers. It's going to look bad. I mean, they have no real feel of how the hell you're going to be able to run anything. Then there was the one play where DeAndre Jordan wasn't ready for it. Was he looking to set a screen? But even if he was looking to set a screen, or even if he wasn't looking to set a screen, the ball going to him there, it hit off of him. Oh, man. But that's the whole feel-out process. DeAndre Jordan just got here. How much practice time is happening in the NBA? I'll tell you for free. Not much. So here's a guy who just got here, and now it's, oh, yeah, go run some sets. What? And that's why you get some uncomfortable possessions the way that we see them. And that's why I feel that there's inconsistency, because at times things are rolling. Then at times different players are out there, and you're trying to force some looks, and you're trying to get everyone involved, but you don't necessarily know how everyone likes to get involved because you're new, and you're trying new rotations, and then this is what you get when that is the case. And I just thought that this team didn't look locked in today. They didn't look prepared. And I almost wonder, is it because they felt that they could walk all over a Toronto Raptors team that didn't have their best players involved? And then once they realized they scored 37 points in the first quarter and everyone was getting their touches and putting the rock through the hoop, that it was going to be an easy night for them. Then they started to coast, and then the Raptors started to chip away because they don't give up. You know damn well that this team, the way that they're coached, they're not going to give you a free pass. If they're down 37, guess what? They'll crawl back as much as they possibly can, even if they fall and they lose by 18. They'll make sure that you're going to earn every single second until that last buzzer sounds. And as they kept chipping away on that offensive glass, you saw the lead slowly evaporate, unfortunately. With that, back to the phones we go. Good evening. You're on.
Hey, what's up, Brooks?
Hey, what's happening?
I think this is a bad loss, obviously, but I think this team, for better or for worse, just plays to their competition, whether like it's better competition or it's worse. And I think that's down to the coaching. Like, there was a moment where the Raptors went on like a 4-minute run where they didn't even score a field goal. And I'm looking at the score and we're only up by 4. And I'm like, come on, man.
Yeah, see, here's my problem, and I see the chat talking about it right now as well. Doc Rivers has not been fantastic, but the bigger problem today was your players, like, this is professional basketball, you know? It's not like it's AAU where you're demanding little kids and you got to go cheer them on. This is professional basketball to the point where there's no, it's a different level. It's not the same coaching where it's rah and you gotta inspire your players. These guys get paid $30 million a year to play hoops. This team, the players stunk today. That was the number one issue. The players stunk themselves. Did Doc have flaws tonight? No doubt. The players stunk, and that was the number one problem in my eyes.
Yeah, I agree 100%. But when like on your point about Harden, where he's being like a lot of times he's passive and stuff like that, I think if you're Doc Rivers and you see Harden being passive, you got to give him a kick up the backside and be like, hey, this is what you have to do. Because Doc Rivers has been in this league long enough and Harden has been in this league long enough. Like, you can talk to Harden and say, hey, you're being too passive here. Embiid needs this. Embiid needs that. Like, Harden's a great player and he's being passive. We all know that. But Doc should be the coach that tells him, hey, you need to do this right now.
I don't disagree with that, and I appreciate the phone call. I don't disagree that Doc Rivers can say, hey, James Harden, you got to do this a little bit better. But at the end of the day, this is a superstar league. Teams win championships outside of Greg Popovich, Eric Spoelstra. I put them aside because they're rare and they're the outlier. They're the Tom Brady. They're the species that it's just hard to relate that to the rest of the NBA because that coaching style just doesn't resonate with the rest of the league. You win championships because Giannis gives you 50. You win championships because Middleton gives you a 40 burger throughout a special series. Budenholzer was labeled as a fraud, as an embarrassment, as someone who can never win a championship, someone who has no idea on how to work a rotation, someone who plays his guys way too long and cares too much about regular season. All these thoughts about him. Giannis gives you 50. Middleton gives you 40. They win a championship. Budenholzer is a great coach. Well, your players play the game. James Harden is a superstar caliber player. He's one of the best we've ever seen play the game. It comes down to James Harden. It comes down to Embiid. It comes down to LeBron. It comes down to Kevin Durant. It comes down to Steph Curry. It comes down to these players. I get, in theory, yes, Doc Rivers should tell James Harden to be a bit more aggressive. You're going to go as far as you possibly can because of James Harden, because of Joel Embiid, because of Kevin Durant, because of Giannis, because of Jokic, because of Shaq and Kobe, because of LeBron. I mean, it really does boil down to your superstar player. Like James Harden, no, James Harden shouldn't need Doc Rivers to tell him that. It's on the professional player that's getting paid $30 million a year to understand I could drop 30 buckets in this league. I get it. When things go bad, it naturally goes to the head coach. I don't think Doc Rivers is great. I think that there's two head coaches in this league way better than everyone else. And then there's just a bunch of guys. There's nice coaches. There's a lot of just guys, just a lot of people, just guys. There's Eric Spoelstra. There's Greg Popovich. Steve Nash, Nick Nurse, they're in that next tier of nice coaches. You got Doc Rivers, who's in that tier of respected coaches. You got a lot of guys. There's not as many game-changing, franchise-changing coaches that you want in this thing. Hell, Doc Rivers is labeled as one of the best coaches to ever do it. That shows you exactly the value of the NBA head coach. Because in general sense here, does he fit in that type of tier? Probably. That's just what an NBA head coach is, though. Doc Rivers is viewed as one of the better head coaches to coach the game. That shows you what an NBA head coach is. That shows you the category of the best coaches. You got your Popoviches, you got your Spoelstras, then you just got guys. So it's not like there's many of these coaches to go out there that's just going to change it. Think about this. It was Brett Brown. Now it's Doc Rivers. Who's the next one? Because guess what? The next one is going to have all these fans feeling the same way that you felt about Brett Brown and about Doc Rivers. All right, let's say, I don't know, I'm just making up names. Tom Izzo comes to town. It'll be Tom Izzo to get fired after that. Let's say it's Jay Wright. It'll be Jay Wright that gets fired after that. Let's say it's Sam Cassell. It's Sam Cassell's fault. Let's say it's Monty Williams. It's Monty Williams' fault. It's the same thing over and over and over and over again. Over and over and over again. Yes, that's my point, Philly Sports. My point is, you say here that Doc Rivers only wins because his star players. Ding, ding, ding. Welcome to the NBA. Why did he win a championship? Because he had star players. Who wins championships every year? Star players. That doesn't mean the coach doesn't have value. The percentage is less, though, than fans want to believe. If you watched today's game and said that Doc was the biggest issue, I say Tobias sucked. Embiid was bad. Harden wasn't good enough. What team is winning many games when those three, your best three players, even though Maxi's better than Tobias, fine. But I don't know many teams in the NBA that are winning a lot of games when that's the case. Your players weren't good today. Could have Doc did things differently. Yes. Would that have changed the outcome of the game? I don't know. I don't know. If you're going to bitch and complain that this team's not deep enough and they're too thin, well, then you can't start screaming that all these alternatives are going to be magnificent and result in victories because you're the same one saying that they have no one on their bench and you can't rely on anyone. Now we got Brett Brown talk. Brett Brown was okay. Doc is better. Yeah, just guys. We got free Korkmaz in the chat. Oh, no. What's going on here? How are we getting to this level? How are we getting to this level? Let's go back to the phones here, and here we go. Hello? Hello? You have to turn down? Nope. Okay. Gave you a shot. Gave you a fair shot at it. You got to make sure if you call in that you eliminate the YouTube feed because there's probably a delay from the phone that you're calling into, but it is what it is. So to summarize, this was a disappointing game. It's a game that stings, and hopefully tomorrow they could change the narrative real quickly. They got a lot of opponents coming up here. I guess maybe instead of grabbing my little handy-dandy notepad that I like to use, I'll just look it up online. When you look at their next upcoming games that they're about to go on, they have the Miami Heat at home. Then you go to that West Coast swing. The Lakers are not very good, but you're still playing the Lakers, and LeBron James can give you 50 points. Lakers, the Clippers, the Suns, the Bucks. The next 4 games, and I can't just overlook the Miami Heat. So it's really 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 games. 2 of them are at home. Milwaukee and Miami are at home. And then you're on the road for Lakers, Clippers, and Suns. It's a nice test. And the fact that they're battling adversity right now, I think this is a time to see if you're battle tested, to see exactly, if you can fight through these brutal times and see if you can kind of grind one out. Sometimes it might take just one ugly win. The title of the show is Sixers Lose Ugly Against the Raptors, right? But sometimes all it takes is an ugly grind out win. Let's utilize, I don't know, let's say the Suns as an example, and just like this hypothetical conversation. Let's say you go to Phoenix. It's a Sunday game at 6 o'clock, weird time. That's 3 o'clock their time, so a little bit of a bizarre start time than you're accustomed, which might throw people off base. It might throw them off guard to try and kind of get a sense of everything on just getting into their natural flow. You wake up, you eat the same thing. You kind of get yourself going on the bike maybe. You stretch, you roll out, you have your pregame shoot-around, all that stuff, morning shoot-around. You're used to a routine at a 7 o'clock or 8 o'clock start. Now you factor in you're on the road, it's 3 o'clock. It changes everything. Let's say it comes down to the wire, fourth quarter, 92-92, and you just win in this greasy, tough 3-possession way where you're diving on the ground, you're getting a loose ball. There's a nice, easy layup for Maxey that's going full force down the court. He gets an easy layup. You get a defensive stand the next possession, and you end up winning the game. It's just tough. It's hard-nosed, right? I mean, it's a hostile environment. It only takes that one to kind of get you going. And that's what I'm looking for right now. Wow, they beat Orlando, but it was an ugly one. They lost to Brooklyn, and we totally understand how abysmal that entire situation played out. So they did have a good win against Dallas. I give them a lot of credit for that win against Dallas because I don't believe people understand how good of a win that was. Right now, though, they're in this spot that is a bit murky. Sometimes it just takes what I just laid out to snap yourself out of it. And I do know selves out of this, they're a scary product. When they turn it on, they're a lethal opponent. Teams are not going to want to see the 76ers. It's just how can they get themselves turned back on? That's on them to figure out. They got to execute better. They got to hit their shots better than they did tonight. And it starts with Embiid. You go as far as your superstars take you. When they have a down night like they have tonight, which they did, it automatically puts you behind the 8 ball. And if you're behind the 8 ball, you're probably going to have a rougher night at the office. All right, back to the phones we go. Hello, how are you?
Hello.
Hello, you're on the air.
Hello. Hello.
Yeah, okay. Hey, you got your shot. You got your shot. Raptors are a good team. They won 5 in a row on the West Coast, including Phoenix. They're a team that plays a gritty style. They're a team that will always play you tough. And today, they did some things to you. They did some things to you. Let's try this again. Hello, you are on the air.
Okay, here is the problem. It's not so much their offense. They have an absolutely terrible defense. And defense wins games.
Not in the NBA, it doesn't. In the NBA, scoring beats defense every single day of the week.
No. If you have a good defense, we'll stop scoring.
Nope. Tell that to Kevin Durant. Tell that to Kyrie Irving. Tell that to Steph Curry. Tell that to LeBron James. Elite offense beats elite defense in the NBA.
Well, where is it with the Sixers? Where's that offense?
They didn't make their shots tonight. That's what I was saying. If they make their shots, they come out and win. Look, it's not like the Raptors. Speaking of defense, the Raptors scored 93 points. Do you know how many times you win in the NBA scoring 93 points in the regular season? I don't know off the top of my head, but that's a very, very, very reasonable number for the Sixers to look at and say, we should have won this basketball game.
Well, why do it when I look at them and I see other teams fly right by them, right by our offense, and the rebounds is atrocious.
Yes.
It's absolutely terrible.
Yeah, they do not do well in transition, and they do have a problem rebounding the basketball right now. That is true. They are not a phenomenal defensive team. That is true. What else is true is elite offense beats elite defense in the NBA. That's very true. You need to have a good defense too, though. Statistically speaking, when you look at NBA champions, there's teams that give you great scoring and they give you top 10 defense also. So I'm not downplaying the importance of defense, but at the same time, elite offense beats elite defense in this league. I'll take someone who can't defend a lick and can score a bunch over someone who can't score a lick and can defend a lot. And I know that both are going to make you pull your hair out, because there's going to be situations where you realize the spacing is out of whack and Joel Embiid's getting doubled insanely because there's zero spacing on the floor. But at the same time, you got to be able to score the rock in this league. You got to be able to score the rock. I apologize. I didn't realize the comment was still up there on the screen when we were speaking. This guy is a clown. Defense wins chips. Okay. Defense wins championships. I think elite superstars win championships, but that's okay. I think elite superstars win championships. I'm not saying defense isn't important, Morris. Defense is important. Teams that win championships have great offenses and they have great defenses. But this whole defense, say that in the NFL. You know what wins championships? Championships. Matthew Stafford, Odell Beckham Jr., Cooper Kupp. You know what wins championships? Pat Mahomes. You know what wins championships? Tom Brady. Does that mean they have bad defenses? No, not at all. Absolutely not. The Rams have Von Miller and Aaron Donald. Absolutely, defense still matters. In the NFL, you got to be able to spread that football around. You got to be able to stretch the field. You got to have speed and Tyreek Hill. Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase is the reason why the Cincinnati Bengals went as far as they did. And that's even with an offensive line that's just disturbing. It's the nature of sports these days. And a reason why is because the way games have evolved with change. For example, defensive holdings, defensive pass interference. You can barely play defense the same way as you used to. Same in the NBA. Now everything's ticky-tack. Now everything's a foul. Now you can't put your hands on players the same way. Now when James Harden drives at the end of the day on Boucher, it ends up being an offensive foul. All of these variables are reasons why the offensive game matters more than the defensive game. Doesn't mean there's no value in the defensive game at all. but because we have adapted and developed so much in terms of just the growth in sports and the athleticism and the speed of the game and how physical it is, and because of how fast these athletes are, the collisions are so intense, and you got to make sure that players aren't getting. It has opened the door for the offense to be a bit more fluid, to be a bit more aggressive, to have that extra edge compared to the defense. So give me a better offense than a defense any day, and I think you get a chance to succeed. I hate people like this, and yes, I hate people like this. In the chat, I'm a Rockets fan. Harden will never win a championship. Congratulations on the fantastic odds in your favor. One team wins a championship a season, and there's a lot of great players in sports in general, not just the NBA, that have championship caliber talent that might not win a championship. James Harden has championship caliber play, championship caliber skill set. Doesn't mean he will. Charles Barkley had one, and I'll take Charles Barkley every single day of the week on my basketball team. There's so many lethal weapons throughout the NBA and in pro sports that never won a championship. Doesn't mean I don't want them on my team to give me an opportunity to compete for a championship, and that's what James Harden is. I don't value any moron out there that says someone will never win a chip, because you probably said that about every player. You probably said that about Giannis because he couldn't shoot. Giannis won a championship and gave you 50. And trust me, I know that there were a lot of people out there that claimed he would never win a chip. And I questioned it. I questioned if you can. Can you win a championship if you can't shoot a damn basketball? He showed me up. The answer was yes. Now, there's a big difference between the way he plays and the way Ben Simmons plays, but just to give you the layout of the land here. Everyone at one point wasn't a champion until you were. So you can say that about everyone. Literally everybody in the league that hasn't won a championship. You'll never win one. That guy will never win one. Cool. I don't care. I don't care if that's your thought. If that's your thought, I just don't give you a lot of respect when it comes to sports, because you're discrediting how hard it is to win a championship. You're not realizing what it takes to win a championship and how difficult it is, and how it honestly has to line up for you too. There's got to be luck involved. Let's say the Minnesota Vikings don't beat the New Orleans Saints with the miracle at the Meadowlands when the Philadelphia Eagles won a championship in 2017. Do you win the Super Bowl? Sometimes things have to play out your way. Well, when you're facing the Golden State Warriors during that era, and when Chris Paul is a bit banged up during that run in Houston, there's a lot of variables here. Sometimes you're unlucky. Sometimes you're lucky. Sometimes the stars align for you. Other times it doesn't. And with James Harden, to act as if he doesn't have the IQ and the skill and the ability to put yourself at a competitive advantage against other opponents in the NBA, well, then that's just silly. And it's stupid. Nurse is not just a guy. I think he falls in that category of nice coach. I think he's put in the category of nice coach. He's a nice coach. There's two guys that I value more than anyone else. Then there's nice coaches, and then there's guys. I think Nick Nurse is a respected guy on the sidelines for sure. He's not Eric Spoelstra, and he's not Greg Popovich, and that's okay. No one is. He's a nice coach. He gets Kawhi Leonard, he wins a championship. He doesn't have Kawhi Leonard, and where are they now? 7th seed? Sounds about right. Wins a championship when they have Kawhi Leonard. 7th seed without Kawhi Leonard with nice players. 40-31, 9 games above 500. Regular season kind of is what it is, but Sixers were the 1st seed last year. It didn't mean much. You want to be in the top 3 to give yourself a good push, to put yourself in a nice spot. Superstars win championships. That's all. Joel is 7-1 and by far the biggest guy on the floor. Why is he going 6 for 20? He just had a tough night. You want to go through the Joel Embiid game log and see how many games he gave you 48, how many games he gave you 36, how many games he gave you 42? I think you'll see a lot more 30-plus than you'll see 6 of 20. I just think a real-life human being aspect came into play tonight for Embiid. And some of those shots, too, like I mentioned earlier, wrapped around a bit. Went in and around, came out. Just didn't fall. I think that there's a lot of miles on the tires right now based off of how this season has played out and how much damage is on his body, the toll on his body based off of everything we asked him to do through this time of the season so far. He's played a lot. He's played a ton. And I like the fact that he's got this new mentality, but that's not a part of the Joel Embiid experience that we have been accustomed to this point. The reason why I bring that up is, while we love the shape that he's in, we know how much care he takes with his body and how professional he handles everything from his nutrition and his stamina and his work ethic and his conditioning and everything about that. But there is a part of this too where this is the second season, I guess really the first, because the reason why he didn't win it last year is because of how many games he didn't play and how many games he missed. This is the first time he's really gone at it to this lethal level. Starting to catch up a little bit. That's why I'm really pacing him throughout this backstretch. But at the same time, we know that there's some chemistry stuff happening right now, and you need him out there. So you have to find that good balance. A game or two, I don't think will be the difference in figuring this thing out. But you got to find the right way to handle this. And you got to really try and work on what is going to put this team in a position to kind of keep themselves at a spot to get into a groove. So with that, I'm going to shut things down here. I want to thank everybody so much for hanging out with me tonight. Once again, one more time, if you're new to the channel, make sure you're hitting that subscribe button and hitting that thumbs up button as well. And utilizing that promo code BROADS at SeatGeek's checkout page for $20 off. And following me on TikTok at Broads Media and Twitter as well. We just hit 7,000 followers there. Thank you so much for all of the crazy support. And with that being said, enjoy the rest of your night or morning. I guess at this point, it's 12:30 a.m. Wow, did not realize that. We have a big one tomorrow against Miami. Let's see if they bounce back. See you guys